Look closely at these creatures. They have our eyes, they have our hands, they possess the exact same capacity for deep love, paralyzing grief, and existential dread that you do. But if you sat among them on this dark night, you wouldn't hear a single conversation. There are no stories told around this fire. There are no laws, no promises, no names for the stars above. For nearly 99% of human history, this absolute silence was our reality. We were a species trapped in a world without words, communicating only through raw, animalistic grunts and frantic hand gestures. Every other creature on Earth was perfectly content with this quiet existence. A chimpanzee's sharp bark could warn of a leopard. A bird's cry could signal the arrival of spring. Basic communication was working perfectly fine. But for humans, this silence wasn't a peaceful state of nature. To understand why we started talking, we must first introduce the ultimate villain of the human story, the extinction threshold. As a physical species, early humans were an absolute evolutionary joke. We left the safety of the trees, but we had no sharp claws to tear flesh. We had no thick fur to survive the freezing nights. We were drastically slower than the apex predators hunting us in the tall grass, and our jaw strength was pathetic compared to our primate cousins. If a lone human encountered a predator on the open savanna, the math of nature was simple. The human died. Our only possible weapon, our absolute last line of defense against extinction, was group cooperation. But our ancient way of communicating was holding us back, keeping us isolated, and leaving us completely vulnerable. Before we look at the bizarre biological glitch that saved our species, I want to ask you a question. If you were trapped in that prehistoric jungle, surrounded by monsters in the dark, what would terrify you more? The physical predators outside, or the fact that you couldn't even call out to your own family for help? Tell me in the comments right now. Let's see how much you value your voice, because language was never a luxury or an intellectual pastime. It was a desperate, bloody escape hatch from the jaws of extinction. The catalyst for our transformation was a devastating, high-stakes evolutionary gamble. If you look at any standard chimpanzee, their larynx, the voice box, is located exceptionally high up in their throat. This is a brilliant, life-saving design because it allows them to breathe oxygen and swallow food at the exact same time without any risk of choking. For millions of years, our ancestors shared this exact same advantage. But as we stood up on two legs and our brains began to rapidly expand, gravity and structural skeletal evolution forced a terrifying trade-off. Our larynx dropped. Physically, this was a disaster. By dropping the larynx lower into the throat, nature turned Homo sapiens into the only primates on Earth who could easily choke to death on their own food. It was a massive biological vulnerability. But in exchange for this lethal risk, a massive hollow acoustic chamber was created right above our vocal cords. For the first time in evolutionary history, a primate possessed the physical hardware capable of modulating air into highly precise, rapid vowels and consonants. The machine was built, the acoustic chamber was ready, but the brain still didn't know how to play the instrument. We stood on the precipice, facing a profound evolutionary debate. Would this new throat design choke us to death, or would we find the genetic key to unlock its hidden power? The breakthrough happened approximately 100,000 years ago through a sudden, silent genetic miracle, the mutation of the FOXP2 gene, famously known to modern science as the language gene. For decades, the media mistakenly labeled FOXP2 as a magical gene that gave humans vocabulary. But the reality is far more fascinating. What this specific genetic mutation actually did was completely restructure the neural architecture of the human brain. It rewired our basal ganglia, the control center for motor habits, granting us an unprecedented, superhuman level of fine motor control over our physical bodies. Suddenly, the human brain was capable of coordinating more than 100 distinct muscles in the tongue, the lips, the jaw, and the larynx simultaneously, moving them in fractions of a second with the precision of a master pianist. This mutation lives on chromosome 7. It rewired the basal ganglia and Broca's area together, creating a neurological circuit that no other species on Earth has ever possessed. Without the FOXP2 gene, your speech would be nothing more than a chaotic, unmodulated stream of air. The biological hardware of the dropped throat had finally met its neurological software. Now, it was time to test this new weapon against our ultimate enemy on the battlefield. To understand the raw power of this new weapon, let us walk through a real concrete crisis on the prehistoric savanna. Imagine 4 of our ancestors tracking a wounded, 6-ton prehistoric elephant through a pitch-black swamp. The tall reeds are thick, the fog is dense, and visibility is close to zero. The hunters are separated. Suddenly, the wind shifts. One hunter hears the massive beast turning around in the darkness. It is preparing to charge directly into the blind spot of his companion on the left. In the old, silent world of hand gestures, this situation was a guaranteed slaughter. To use sign language, you need a direct line of sight. You need light. If you cannot see your comrade's hands, your communication is dead, and so is your tribe. But on this night, the rewired FOXP2 gene and the dropped larynx alter history. The hunter doesn't need to be seen. He uses the invisible invisible superpower of modulated sound. He releases a precise, low-frequency vocal whisper that cuts through the fog. Tree on your left, the beast is charging from behind. The words travel over the barriers of the tall grass, bending around the dark obstacles of the swamp, and strike the ears of his companion. The second hunter doesn't just react to a generic sound of panic. He receives complex, multi-layered data. He steps safely behind the tree, raises his spear, and coordinates a flanking maneuver in absolute darkness. Language became our invisible shield. It allowed us to conquer the environment because it allowed us to project our thoughts across long distances, behind physical obstacles, and through the terrifying blindness of the night. Silence was no longer killing us. Our voices were keeping us alive. But as the external threat of predators faded, a new, far more dangerous villain emerged from within: internal chaos. As our survival rates skyrocketed, human tribes began to grow exponentially. But early human psychology was bound by a strict mathematical limit, known to modern science as Dunbar's number. In a standard primate group, trust and social bonds are maintained entirely through physical grooming, literally picking bugs off each other's fur. This physical act releases oxytocin and builds alliances. But physical grooming has a hard limit. A chimpanzee can only groom one individual at a time. As a human tribe scales past 100 or 150 members, it becomes physically and mathematically impossible to spend enough hours in the day grooming everyone to maintain peace. Without trust, large tribes instantly fracture into violent civil wars. The tribe splits apart, cooperation vanishes, and the extinction threshold closes back in. We were about to collapse under the weight of our own social success. Physical grooming was bankrupt. We needed a highly efficient, systemic upgrade to build trust on a massive scale. If we could not find a way to bond hundreds of minds together simultaneously, our civilization would die before it even began. And that is when humanity weaponized its voice to create the ultimate social glue: gossip. Language allowed us to replace physical grooming with vocal grooming. A human could now groom 20 people at the exact same time simply by using their voice around a campfire. We didn't use our early words to discuss the grand philosophy of the universe. We used them to share vital, calculated social data. Who can we trust? Who stole the meat from yesterday's hunt? Who is a coward and who is a hero? Gossip allowed large human societies to protect their reputation systems, punish cheaters, and build massive, unified coalitions that no other animal on Earth could ever replicate. We survived the internal collapse by turning the spark of sound into a network of trust. But the true world-altering superpower of language wasn't just that it allowed us to talk about the physical world. It was that it allowed us to talk about things that do not physically exist. Every other animal on Earth is permanently trapped in reality. A monkey can scream to warn of an eagle, but it can never invent a story about a sky god who created the eagle. Human language broke the chains of reality. We invented myths, we created religions, we engineered nations, laws, human rights, and currencies. A $100 bill has absolutely no intrinsic value. It is a useless piece of paper until human language allows millions of minds to believe in the exact same imaginary story. Language allowed us to accumulate knowledge across generations. A young leopard must learn how to survive entirely from scratch, based on its own short, dangerous life. But a human child can sit by a fire, listen to an elder speak for 1 hour, and inherit 40,000 years of collective human wisdom. We didn't just escape the extinction threshold, we completely conquered it. The timeline of our species is a journey out of the dark. We began as vulnerable, naked apes, huddled in absolute silence, waiting to be eaten by the monsters of the night. But through a dropped throat, a rewired brain, and the sheer necessity of survival, we turned noise into order. We started talking because we were terrified of the silence, and we kept talking until our words built the modern world. The next time you speak to someone you love, or listen to a story around a modern fire, remember what that voice actually is. It is a genetic miracle, a hard-won victory over extinction, and the ultimate spark that brought humanity out of the dark.